Disclaimer: it's inspired by reality, shaped by imagination.
What happens when one of Hollywood's toughest icons sits across from one of daytime TV's sharpest tongues? No one expected Harrison Ford, the man who brought us Han Solo and Indiana Jones, to ignite one of the most heated debates The View has ever seen. The topic? Whether seniors should ride public transportation for free. It started simple, almost harmless, a conversation about aging, mobility, and the challenges of everyday life for seniors. But it didn't stay polite for long. Joy Behar, known for her blunt takes, rolled her eyes at the idea of free rides, arguing it would just pile more strain on taxpayers. Harrison Ford, with his famously gravelly voice and no-nonsense demeanor, wasn't having it. What unfolded was a fiery clash that pitted practicality against compassion, independence against dignity. The audience gasped, cheered, and even shouted as Ford's quiet intensity built into a passionate defense of seniors' rights, while Joy doubled down with her trademark sarcasm. It wasn't just a debate. It was a cultural flashpoint, with two household names colliding head-on in front of millions. And by the end, viewers weren't just talking about the issue. They were saying this: Harrison Ford didn't just argue his point. He left Joy Behar stunned. The studio lights dimmed just a touch as the audience's applause died down. Joy Behar leaned forward in her chair, flashing that signature smirk of hers, the one viewers know means she's about to stir the pot. Across from her sat Harrison Ford, posture relaxed, eyes steady but with the faintest edge of impatience. He wasn't there to promote a movie, not this time. He was there to talk about something he cared about: aging with dignity in America. "All right, Harrison," Joy began, wagging a finger like she was scolding a nephew, "you're 81 years old. You're a legend, yes, but do you really think giving seniors free rides on buses and trains is realistic? Somebody has to pay for it." The audience chuckled nervously, sensing the jab. Harrison didn't laugh. Instead, he shifted in his seat and leaned toward the microphone. "You know what's not realistic, Joy?" His voice was low, deliberate. "Expecting people who worked their whole lives, paid their taxes, built this country, to be stranded at home because they can't afford a bus fare." The room shifted. You could feel the tension spark like flint against steel. Joy wasn't backing down. She threw up her hands dramatically. "Oh, please, you think the government is some magical piggy bank? Free rides here, free rides there? What's next? Free popcorn at the movies for seniors?" The audience laughed, but this time the laughter wasn't entirely with her. A few scattered boos rippled through the seats. Harrison caught it, and his jaw tightened. "You know what's not popcorn, Joy?" he shot back. "It's independence. You take away someone's ability to get around, you're telling them their life is smaller. You're telling them to sit down and wait to die. Is that really the message you want to send to millions of older Americans?" The crowd erupted in applause. Joy raised her eyebrows and tried to ride the moment. "Harrison, don't guilt-trip me. I love seniors. I am a senior. But free transportation? Come on. Who do you think's footing the bill? Some middle-class 25-year-old struggling to pay rent?" Her words cut sharp, but Ford didn't flinch. He leaned back, crossed his arms, and gave her that trademark Ford glare, the one that once silenced stormtroopers and villains on screen. "You know what young people should be thinking about?" His tone was sharper now. "How they're going to get old, too. How they'll want to visit their grandkids, get to a doctor's appointment, or just go out for coffee without worrying about whether they can afford the bus ticket. This isn't charity. It's planning ahead for the kind of society we all have to live in." The crowd cheered louder, and Joy's smirk wavered. She tried to pivot, waving at the other co-hosts for backup, but the moment was already alive. Sunny Hostin leaned in, her voice softer. "I think Harrison makes a good point. Access to transportation is access to life. It's not just economics, it's freedom." The audience clapped, while Joy rolled her eyes. Okay, freedom on wheels," she quipped, clearly trying to lighten the mood. But Harrison wasn't laughing. He pointed toward the audience. Look out there. How many people in this room have a mom, dad, or grandparent that doesn't drive anymore? How many of them skip doctor's appointments because the cab is too expensive, or stay home because they can't get across town? That's not freedom. That's neglect. The studio went quiet. No laughter, no applause, just silence. It was one of those rare moments on The View where the audience collectively leaned forward, waiting to see what would come next. Joy, never one to let silence sit, leaned back with a sly grin. So what you're saying, Harrison, is you want the government to be Uber for old folks. Got it. The crowd groaned, and Harrison's lips pressed into a thin line. The spark had officially caught flame. The applause from Harrison's last words still lingered, but Joy wasn't about to surrender her turf. She leaned forward, rested her elbows on the table, and gave him that knowing smile that had sent countless guests into verbal traps. "Harrison," she said sweetly, "you're painting this beautiful picture. Seniors riding the bus to get coffee, see their grandkids, live their best lives. Very touching. But let's deal with reality. Public transit is already struggling in this country. Buses don't show up, trains are late, systems are falling apart. Now you want to add millions of seniors riding for free. Where exactly does that money come from? Hollywood fairy dust." A few chuckles scattered through the audience. Joy was trying to frame him as out of touch, a millionaire actor lobbying for handouts. But Harrison wasn't blinking. "Hollywood fairy dust?" he repeated slowly, his gravelly voice cutting through the noise. "No. Taxes. The same taxes those seniors spent 40, 50 years paying. You don't get to call it a free ride when they already paid for it. What do you think Social Security is? What do you think Medicare is? These aren't gifts. They're investments seniors made in this country that this country now owes them back." The audience clapped loudly at that, and even Sarah Haynes looked impressed. Joy tilted her head, her tone sharpening. "You make it sound so simple, but here's the thing, Harrison. If the government starts giving free rides to every senior, do you know what happens? The system collapses. Everyone wants a freebie, everyone wants their turn, and pretty soon, nobody's paying in." "Wrong," Harrison said firmly, his eyes narrowing. "We're not talking about everyone. We're talking about people who've already paid in their whole lives. You're acting like seniors are freeloaders. They're not. They're the reason you and I are even sitting here having this conversation." The crowd roared. Joy raised her hands in mock surrender, but her grin was razor sharp. "Oh, don't guilt me, Harrison. My parents were immigrants. They worked their tails off. Nobody gave them free rides." "Exactly. They worked their tails off. And wouldn't you have wanted them to have a little more dignity in their later years? To not have to choose between groceries and a cab to the doctor? This isn't about charity, it's about respect." The room hummed with agreement. Whoopi Goldberg, usually quiet until the fire burned hottest, finally spoke up. "Joy, you know, he's not wrong. We keep saying we love our seniors, but then we make it impossible for them to live. Transportation is a basic need." Joy waved her off, unfazed. "I love seniors too, Whoopi, but let's be honest. Not every 80-year-old needs a free bus pass. Some of them are still driving their Teslas. Do we really need to give Harrison Ford a free Metro card?" The audience laughed at that one, but Harrison leaned forward, his stare so intense it silenced the giggles. "This isn't about me. This isn't about rich people. It's about the millions who aren't in this chair, who don't have a platform, who don't have money in the bank. The ones living on fixed incomes, watching prices go up while their world shrinks smaller and smaller. You keep making jokes, but I'm telling you this is life or death for some people." The room snapped quiet again. A few people clapped softly, unsure if it was okay to break the tension. Joy pounced on the pause. "Life or death? Really? Come on, Harrison. Don't be so dramatic. We're talking about bus fares, not heart surgery." And that was when Harrison's demeanor shifted. He leaned back, shook his head, and gave her the kind of disappointed look a father gives a child who doesn't understand the seriousness of the situation. You think missing doctor's appointments isn't life or death? You think seniors isolating at home, getting depressed, giving up on life because they can't get out, you think that's a joke? His voice didn't rise. If anything, it dropped, lower, steadier, but it cut deeper. The audience sat stunned. Sunny Hostin jumped in, her tone passionate. He's right. Studies show isolation kills. Seniors without access to transportation have worse health outcomes, higher mortality. This isn't just economics, it's public health. Applause broke out, louder this time. But Joy, though she wasn't giving up ground, plastered on her most dismissive smile. All right. So you all want a free bus pass revolution. Fine. But let me ask, if we keep giving everything away for free, where does it stop? Free transportation, free health care, free food. At some point, you're just running a socialist country. The crowd booed, and Harrison's eyes blazed. This isn't socialism, Joy. This is decency. This is America taking care of the people who built it. And if you can't see the difference, then maybe you've forgotten what country you're living in. The audience jumped to its feet with applause, a full standing ovation. Joy looked around, her smile finally faltering. But she leaned into her mic one more time. "Oh, Harrison," she said with a tone dripping with sarcasm, "you've always been good at playing the hero. Looks like you're trying to be one in real life, too." The applause was still rolling, but the clash was far from over. The tension on stage had turned into something more, a storm brewing, headed for a lightning strike.
The air in the studio had thickened. The applause for Harrison's last remark still echoed, but everyone could feel that the conversation had shifted. Joy leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms, her smile tight and sharp. Harrison, by contrast, leaned in, elbows on the table, as though the debate wasn't entertainment at all, but a mission. "Let me tell you a story," Harrison began, his gravelly voice softer now. "Last month, I was in Indiana, visiting an old friend. Vietnam vet. He's 81, lives on a fixed income, lost his wife last year. His daughter's across the country. The man barely leaves his house anymore because he can't afford the gas to drive and the bus stop's too far for him to walk. So he just sits at home staring at the TV. That's not living, Joy. That's a slow death. And we could fix it, but we don't." The audience was hushed, completely locked in. Joy sighed, shaking her head. "Look, I'm sorry for your friend, but anecdotes don't make policy. You can't just take one sad story and demand we change the whole country. It's unrealistic." Harrison's jaw tightened. That one sad story is millions of stories. Seniors all over this country are stranded. Do you know how many older Americans skip medical appointments because they can't get there? You want numbers? 1 in 5. That's not an anecdote. That's a crisis. Sunny Hostin leaned in, backing him up. "He's right, Joy, and it's worse in rural areas where public transit barely exists. Free transportation for seniors wouldn't just be kind, it would save lives. It would keep people connected to their families, their doctors, their communities." Applause rippled across the audience. Joy pounced again, her voice sharper. "Okay, but what you're all missing is fairness. You're asking young, struggling workers to foot the bill for people who already had their chance. My daughter's paying student loans, rent, groceries. Why should she also pay higher taxes so a senior can ride the bus for free?" The audience groaned at her framing, but Joy didn't flinch. Harrison's eyes narrowed. That one sad story is millions of stories. Seniors all over this country are stranded. Do you know how many older Americans skip medical appointments because they can't get there? You want numbers? 1 in 5. That's not an anecdote. That's a crisis. Whoopi Goldberg, who had been quiet for most of the exchange, finally raised her hand. I gotta say, Joy, I hear what you're saying about young people struggling. It's true. But you can't pit one generation against another. We're supposed to lift each other up, not keep score. The applause was thunderous. Joy looked around, sensing momentum slipping away, and went in for a final blow. All right, let's say we do this. Free public transit for every senior. Do you honestly think these systems, already underfunded and overcrowded, can handle it? What happens when buses are packed, trains break down, and nobody gets where they're going? You're setting everyone up to fail. Harrison leaned forward, his voice steady, each word deliberate. Joy, systems fail when people give up on fixing them. What I'm talking about isn't giving up, it's investing. Investing in a future where nobody, especially the people who gave this country everything, gets left behind on the curb. The audience roared louder than before. People stood up. Some clapped over their heads. The camera caught close-ups of audience members wiping their eyes, nodding furiously, even shouting, "Tell her!" Joy pressed her lips together, clearly rattled, but not willing to surrender. She leaned in, her tone icy. "Well, Harrison, maybe you should run for office if you care that much, because speeches don't fix broken budgets." And that was the spark that set the whole room on fire. The audience booed her openly now, something rare for The View. Harrison, calm but burning, delivered the line that sealed the moment. "No, Joy, but priorities do. And maybe it's time this country put its money where its mouth is when it says it values its seniors." The crowd erupted in chants of "yes, yes," drowning out Joy's attempts to respond. The emotional temperature had reached its peak. Everyone in the room knew it. This wasn't just a debate anymore. It was a battle over values.
The studio was vibrating with energy, the audience still buzzing from Harrison's last line. Joy Behar adjusted her glasses, trying to mask her irritation behind a sarcastic grin. She wasn't about to let an actor, even Harrison Ford, dominate her stage. "All right, Harrison," she said, her voice dripping with mock patience. "You're very good at speeches, maybe even better than your movies, but you're dodging the real issue. Free rides sound nice. Everything free sounds nice. But when people hear that word, free, it usually means somebody else pays. Why should struggling Americans be forced into higher taxes just so an 80-year-old can ride the bus to bingo night?" A collective gasp rolled across the audience. A few boos erupted, cutting through the silence. Even Whoopi's eyebrows shot up. Harrison didn't flinch. His jaw tightened, and when he spoke, his voice was low but steady, a warning before the storm. "Bingo night?" he repeated, his eyes narrowing. "You really think that's what this is about? Let me tell you something, Joy. The last time I was at a VA hospital, I saw men who fought in wars for this country, men who can't afford a car anymore, men who sit in their apartments wondering how they'll get to their next appointment. You're reducing them to bingo night? That's insulting." The crowd roared in agreement, clapping and shouting. Even Whoopi's eyebrows shot up. Joy lifted her hands defensively, smirking. "Oh, come on, don't twist my words. I'm just saying we can't keep handing out benefits like candy. There's a cost." Harrison leaned forward now, voice rising. "The cost is already being paid by seniors trapped in their homes, by families who can't visit their parents because they live miles away, by people who built this country and are now being told they're too expensive to help. That's the real cost, Joy." The audience clapped again, a wave of support drowning out Joy's comeback. She pressed on, her tone sharp, almost biting. "So what, Harrison? So you want us to just open the floodgates and give everything away? Where do you draw the line?" Harrison fixed her with that classic Ford stare, the kind that once made entire movie villains freeze. He paused, letting the silence weigh heavy, then delivered the blow. "The line gets drawn when people stop caring about each other. And if you think we can afford to lose that, Joy, then maybe you're sitting in the wrong chair." The studio exploded. Some audience members gasped, others cheered, some even stood on their seats waving their hands. The camera panned across the stage as Joy's lips parted in shock, caught off guard by the sheer force of the statement. Whoopi reached out, resting her hand on Joy's arm, almost as if to say, "Don't push it further." Joy leaned back, visibly rattled, but refusing to respond. The breaking point had been reached. Harrison had turned the room into his court, and Joy had nothing left but silence.
The studio slowly began to settle, though the energy in the room still felt electric. The audience's cheers for Harrison lingered in the air, buzzing like static long after he delivered his final blow. Joy sat back in her chair, arms crossed, her usual quick wit muted. For once, the veteran host had been outmaneuvered not with sharp jokes or louder volume, but with the weight of conviction. Whoopi leaned in, voice calm but steady, almost acting as referee. "Look, folks, whether you agree with Harrison or not, you can't deny he spoke from the heart. And that's what this table is supposed to be about, the hard conversations, the ones that matter." The audience applauded again, this time softer, more thoughtful. Harrison adjusted his jacket, finally allowing himself a small smile. "I didn't come here to fight. I came here to remind people seniors don't disappear just because they stop driving. They don't stop mattering because they're retired. If we call ourselves a civilized society, then it's on us to make sure they're not left behind." It wasn't fiery now, but it was powerful in its quietness. The camera zoomed in on faces in the audience, a woman wiping a tear, a man nodding slowly, arms crossed over his chest, clearly moved. Finally, Joy broke her silence, her voice softer, less combative. "Well, Harrison, you've made your case. I still don't know how the money works, but I can't argue with wanting dignity for people who've given their whole lives." There was no smirk this time, just honesty. The audience clapped warmly, almost like a closing note to the clash. Within minutes, social media lit up. Clips of Harrison's fiery defense of seniors flooded Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube. One caption read, "Harrison Ford just destroyed Joy Behar on live TV, and he's right." Another clip racked up millions of views in hours. Quote, "This isn't charity, it's dignity," unquote. Harrison leaves the View speechless. By the time the credits rolled, the debate was already being called one of the most explosive in the View's history. But beyond the clash, one truth had taken root. Harrison Ford had forced a national conversation about seniors, transportation, and what society owes those who built it. As the show closed, the camera lingered on Harrison. He leaned back, giving the faintest shrug, as if to say he wasn't chasing headlines, just telling the truth. And somehow, that made the moment even bigger. If you liked this powerful moment, make sure to subscribe for more celebrity clashes, emotional showdowns, and unforgettable TV debates. And tell us in the comments, do you think seniors deserve free public transportation?